I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Well, thousands of trees blown down in July windstorms are being chipped and turned into fuel for a local power plant. It's a silver lining and a sign of the increasing role biomass energy plays in this region.
The surprise announcement making headlines around the world. Duluth-born and Hibbing-raised Bob Dylan is the winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature.
And we'll have the week's business headlines and a news file story from 25 years ago.
It's all up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, there's been quite a buzz about Bob Dylan winning the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Local boy does good, doesn't he?
Yeah, pretty
He
exciting.
did well. That's
pretty
right.
Exciting news, and
It
we'll have
certainly
more
is.
on that a little bit later.
Yes,
in
we
the
sure
show.
will. Thank you.
Why don't you introduce our first
All
guest?
right, thank you very much. Well, powerful windstorms back in July cut a swath of destruction across eastern portions of Duluth and townships to the north of the city. Left behind was a mess of twisted and broken trees, a major cleanup project that has continued into the fall. Thousands of downed trees have been made into wood chips and burned as biomass at Minnesota Power's Hibbing plant in West Duluth. Well, it's a silver lining to the storm and an indication of increasing role that biomass is playing in our nation's energy future. And so, joining us with more on this important topic tonight is Bill Sawyer, Manager of Renewable Business Operations at Minnesota Power. And Brian Brashaw is with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Products Laboratory. Thanks to both of you for being here. I can imagine that this was certainly provided a lot of fuel now for the Hibbing plant because so many trees were brought down.
Absolutely, Denny. First, thank you both, Dennis and
Good to
Julie,
have
for
you.
having us on the program tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about the important role that biomass energy plays for Minnesota Power's customers and our local manufacturing in the timber and paper industries.
So do you measure all this biomass you're getting now from the downed trees by the tonnage?
Yes, absolutely right. So we get the biomass trucked to us in normal semi-trailers, and that's measured on site on a wood scale, and so we can tell how much comes in and how much we're using for fuel for our customers.
Bill, can you give a little bit of an indication as far as how much fuel or how much energy was generated or could be potentially generated out of that blowdown here in the Duluth area?
Absolutely. Well, as you know and as you mentioned, there were significant storms in July in
Yes.
both Duluth and Island Lake north of Duluth that downed a number of trees, and those trees have been getting cleaned up since that time and delivered to our facility for beneficial reuse. The storm at times had power out to our customers in a number
Sure.
of areas for a significant power length of time, and we appreciate that our customers were so understanding on having their power out. But the silver lining, as you mentioned, was the biomass then became available for us to utilize for
Sure.
renewable energy. And up until now, the fuel that we've taken from that storm was able to generate power for about 10,000 homes for a period of about 1 week of time. So a
okay.
significant amount of fuel.
Yeah. Brian, other than the storm damaged trees, are trees being harvested, grown and harvested here in the Northland for use as biofuels specifically?
You know, biomass comes from a lot of sources. Some of it's byproducts, residues from manufacturing operations, from lumber operations, bark, and other materials from paper operations. But it also comes from harvested wood that doesn't have a current home in the market. So it might be underutilized species. It might be a byproduct of reducing hazardous fuels that come from, you know, we're trying to reduce fire risk or forest insect damage as well. So there's a lot of different sources that biomass really can come from.
Has biomass leveled off? Do you see it growing?
We are seeing it playing an increasing role in the forest products industry, both here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and nationally. Biomass can be used, chips and residues in a lot of different applications. We're really strongly supporting the area of renewable energy and biomass energy for steam and heat, but it also heats homes and schools. We're seeing, we have 5 modern wood heating installations that have just taken place in the last year in Northeast Minnesota, Northeast Regional Correctional Facility, 2 schools in St. Louis County, DNR facility, and Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center. And they're being heated in clean, efficient, not your grandfather's old wood stove, but clean, efficient, reliable heating systems that are producing tremendous heat from a resource that needs a home.
Now, most of the residential areas that experienced damage in that windstorm have been cleaned up now, but a lot of the wooded areas still have a lot of blowdown out there. How important is it to get into those wooded areas and kind of pull out that extra fuel and maybe turn it into biofuel?
Well, it certainly is a good idea to do that because of the ability to beneficially reuse that fuel for renewable electricity production, but also, maybe Brian can speak to a little bit of what can happen with wooded areas or the forest if that material is left there and creates a fire hazard.
Exactly, and we really are managing our forests. The number one way to manage forests is timber harvest, and some of it from blowdown is more challenging to get out, but it really creates a home, and it helps us. It helps landowners achieve their objectives, and in this case, their objective is to clean up their site. But it also can improve wildlife habitat, it can reduce fire risks, and it can deal with some dead and dying trees that we're going to be faced with insects like emerald ash borer.
Brian, is biomass creating jobs? What's it doing for the economy?
Well, the whole forest products industry is really important to the state of Minnesota, the state of Wisconsin. There's 30,000 direct jobs in the wood products industry in Minnesota, and another 30,000 that support those. The biomass energy sector is several thousand jobs of that, but it's very important. It's logging, it's pulp and paper, it's lumber, and it's secondary wood products manufacturing, like furniture and cabinetry and everything else that's produced. So that this biomass plays a role in our economy in a very positive way for the state and the region.
Where does Minnesota Power typically get its biomass?
Our biomass would come from northeastern Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin, and there's a good reason behind that. You have to truck that to our facility, so from an economic perspective and from a use of the trucking and the logging resources, you want to have generation facility that uses biomass situated in an area with a lot of biomass, so you don't have to go too far out to truck in that fuel.
Do you specifically work with a lot of loggers or forest products companies in the area and solicit biomass waste for?
We absolutely
Hibbing?
do. So the facility that I manage for Minnesota Power, the Hibbing Renewable Energy Center, is located next to the Verso paper mill in West Duluth. And so we utilize the bark from their paper operations as a fuel to provide steam to the paper mill. And then we utilize the logging residue, so the tops and limbs from the trees when the loggers go out to harvest the roundwood for the paper manufacturers.
So they are providing the fuel to the power plant and then to power back to the paper company.
Correct. Our industry and our residential customers.
Does Hibbing use other fuel other than biomass?
Hibbing does use a small amount of coal and or natural gas to support the combustion of the biomass, probably 5 to 10% of our fuel.
Which leads to the question, I know you still have coal facilities out in central North Dakota. Is coal still a viable fuel for the power industry?
Absolutely, coal is a viable fuel for the power industry, Dennis, and we're working on ways to continually make coal more efficient and cleaner.
Is there a market for biomass right now where beyond Minnesota Power and power plants? Are there places for people in the logging industry to actually sell their materials at a price that makes it worthwhile to bring it in?
We're working really hard to try to create additional markets. There are biomass power markets within the state. There are opportunities for chip-based heating systems that we talked about for small and medium-sized businesses and institutions. Those folks can actually work with Wisconsin State Wood Energy Team, Minnesota State Wood Energy Team to do some assessments to see if they're a good candidate for conversion to those fuels. And then there's some of the new advancing technologies like biochemicals and biofuels. And again, those are going to create some future opportunities, especially to use the species that we don't currently have a market for. You know, some of the things that can be reduced from fire treatments and fuel treatments. So there is going to be, you know, increasing opportunities.
What kind of a future is there for biomass for somebody who wants to heat their home with, say, pellets or wood? What, is there a future for that?
There's very efficient systems available. There's a lot of folks that have grown up heating their homes with wood. The new technologies, the new systems and for homeowners are clean and efficient and cost effective. Small, medium-sized institutions, we've got that opportunity. Pellets and chip, you know, and most of that's going to be a pellet-based system. But even ironically, a lot of wood pellets now are going into barbecue grills. So you can grill your brats and hamburgers and steaks with a wood-based pellet for your grill.
A lot of individuals and businesses can tap into incentives for renewable energy, you know, solar or wind energy. Are there incentives available for people to utilize biofuels right now?
You know, I think there are some things that are out there that are not quite to the level of the wind and solar incentives in terms of utilization of biomass for energy, but there are some opportunities there for customers.
You mentioned wind and solar. Do you think that will remain perhaps a leader in fueling power plants more so than biomass?
Well, wind and solar play a strong role in our power supply for our customers. And the good thing about biomass is it's complementary to wind and solar in that it's carbon neutral and it's dispatchable, so it can be turned up, it can be turned down to meet our customers' energy needs, and complements the wind and the solar resources that are not available around the clock.
Bill, Brian, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much. Interesting story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
After months of public and private posturing, it's over. There will be no Airbus maintenance base in Duluth and no engine repair facility in Hibbing. The Metropolitan Airports Commission says lending Northwest Airlines the money it wants would be risky business.
We ran out of gas. We would exceed our bonding capacity, which meant we would have to go back to the taxpayers.
MAC fell $120 million short of its $390 million piece of the financial package.
We are taking a risk up here. The range is taking a risk. St. Louis County is taking a risk. The IRRB is taking a risk. Metropolitan Airports Commission does not want to take a risk, and that's a problem.
State Senator Sam Solon says things would be different if the jobs and development were targeted for the Twin Cities. Even Governor Arnie Carlson was caught off guard by today's turn of events.
I'm surprised, as are others, I'm surprised that Northwest would walk away from a package of $620 million. And that's the reason I'm leaving it on the table. They may decide to come back. Sometimes what's not terribly appetizing today looks awfully good tomorrow.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2016 is awarded to Bob Dylan for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. He is a great poet. He is a great poet in the English-speaking tradition, and he is a wonderful sampler, a very original sampler. He embodies the tradition, and for 54 years now he's been at it, and reinventing himself, constantly reinventing himself, creating a new identity.
That announcement Thursday morning in Stockholm, Sweden has turned the literary world on its ear, marking the first time a singer-songwriter has won a Nobel Prize. And it has certainly turned the world's attention on Duluth, where Bobby Zimmerman was born, and Hibbing, where he grew up and attended high school. It highlights an exciting week for John Bushey, whose local Dylan radio show Highway 61 Revisited will be celebrating its 25th anniversary this weekend. And Zane Bale is a Duluth Dylan Fest committee member and an organizer of this weekend's celebration. And thanks to both of you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, John, what was your reaction when you first heard about the Nobel Prize for Bob Dylan?
Well, he's won so many awards over the years. You know, people make a big deal about this, the Nobel Prize in literature, but you look at him, he's been nominated for 40 Grammy Awards, he's won 10, he's got Academy Awards, Golden Globes, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's just on and on and on. He's been honored with so many things. We're obviously very thrilled with every award he gets, and it's just this is kind of one of the big ones. So we're obviously extremely thrilled that he finally got this one. There's been talk for several years that he was in the running, and it's great to see that he finally did get it.
Yeah.
He's being called a poet, obviously a poet extraordinaire. It's not usual to call a songwriter a poet, is it? I mean, there's poetry perhaps to all music, but...
Yeah, I like to liken it to a quote that he made in 1965 when they asked him if he thought he was a poet. And his response was, I don't know, I come in on such a back door that I don't know what a Keats or a Longfellow would think of my stuff. And I think it'd probably be a very similar answer to something like this award. I came in on such a back door that I don't know what, another great, someone in literature would think of his stuff. Mm-hmm. He seems to be very modest about these awards and not overdwell on them. He didn't mention it at all in concert last night.
Mm-hmm. Zane, what do you think? As you read or listen to Bob Dylan lyrics, do you think that they stand on their own as poetry without the harmonica, without the guitar, without that distinctive voice?
I do, and I've heard several local poets read Bob Dylan's words as poetry at poet events during our Duluth Dylan Festival, and it's profound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that Dylan really spoke, first of all, to that generation of the 60s when he first emerged on the scene?
I don't really have an answer for that. I can tell you that what many people that are far more knowledgeable than I have said is that somehow Bob Dylan had his finger on the pulse of the nation. He was just through whatever gift or whatever he had with words, that he was able to express in words what many people were feeling. Mm-hmm. And indeed, I do believe he did that. That's the way they actually introduced him the year in 1965 at the Newport Folk Festival. He has his pulse on the finger of the nation, and indeed he did. He seemed to foretell things that were coming, and even he can't explain how or where or why those songs came from.
So John, is Bob Dylan a flashback to people of my age, or does he resonate with young people today?
That's a great question, and the truth is you go to a Bob Dylan concert today and you're going to see young people, older people, people of our generation, younger. There's a certain generation. Dylan is one of those. Joan Baez said it best. She said, Bob Dylan can hit anybody at any time, and if he touches you, if his words touch you, they can touch you very deep. Mm-hmm. And I love that quote of hers.
I do too.
That's a good one.
Now, I've heard both of you referred to as Dylanologists. I don't know
I was
if that's
misquoted then because I am no Dylanologist. I thank goodness for John and lots of other great Dylanologists we have in our local community.
But John spoke to Dylan speaking to people. What speaks to you about Dylan? What kind of first got you intrigued and really brought you on board this train?
Well, I came to to Dylan through Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Kingston Trio and the Chad Mitchell Trio. That was music my dad listened to. And then I found out Bob Dylan wrote all these songs, and I found out Bob Dylan was born in Duluth and raised in Hibbing in 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher at Irving School in Duluth was from Hibbing, and we talked about that. But really, the Dylan committee has been just a great joy that I've had the opportunity to be involved in and gotten to know John over the years, and I've been working on this for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm. What about you, John? What kind of first got you intrigued by Bob Dylan?
Spring break trip in college to Big Bend National Park, Texas. I discovered the Beatles, and I discovered somebody put on the greatest hits of this guy named Bob Dylan. And I don't know what it was, but they said he was from Duluth, and that intrigued me. And I was already, as a young boy, collecting Houdini things, you know, because I'm a magician. But somehow I started going down and buying Bob Dylan records. And, you know, finally I went up to the counter and said, how many records does this guy have? I was just spending all my money, and then I started discovering all the books and reading about him. And it's just fascinating how much stuff has been written about him and analyzing. There's whole books written on one song, just analyzing it. So he's truly been a subject, I think, that has led the way through many of the tumultuous times of the 1960s or 70s, even 80s, 90s, that his words have somehow guided people with far more popular influence on popular culture, like the Beatles. But it was Dylan that kind of led their way through.
You know, and if I can just bring this up, you know, there's when you start looking at history, the history of music in our culture, few musicians, few singers have truly changed music.
Yeah.
And I've listed a few. Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
He was a superstar in his day. Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, the Beatles, Bob Dylan. There aren't many on that list.
No, there really aren't.
Is there somebody today who should be on that list? I can't think of a soul who's really changed music.
You know, I'm going to bring up one that is no longer with us, but another Minnesota icon.
Prince?
Prince. Prince, in his own way, had great influence and great change on his generation of music. And I think that is partly why this Nobel Prize is so important, because Bob is still here. It's not like a posthumous award. Bob Dylan's still here, but they were both Minnesota music icons.
There have been many wonderful musicians and icons over the generations, but so few have changed the face of a generation, or more than a generation.
Yeah, multi-generational. And to have a show for 25 years like John has had.
Exactly.
And just to have that kind of catalog of music. What do you say, John? Over 600 songs, and John plays all kinds of versions of those songs on his show. And you're celebrating the anniversary this weekend. Talk about that. And
I never thought that my show would last 2 months or 3 months. But the current station director at KUMD way back in 1991 was John Ziegler. He knew I had this large collection. We started the show, and I play not only Bob Dylan music, but the music of those that Bob Dylan influenced or was influenced by, cover versions, Dylan songs performed by other artists. I play a lot of live material, which you don't get to hear anywhere else on any radio station, music from concerts and rare outtakes. And I am just consider myself very blessed to have been, for whatever reason, maybe because of just in Duluth, have been allowed to do this, to share my passion with other people. And when I started streaming around the world is when I first realized that, wow, people are actually listening, and I'm getting all these emails and
from overseas even.
Yeah.
I literally know people who plan their Saturday afternoon around your show. So, you know, there are people who just really, really love what you're doing. And are you going to incorporate the Nobel Prize at all into this weekend's activity?
We are on Saturday, and we're so excited about it. We have a big cake, and we're going to hopefully have a proclamation, at least for John's show, and maybe it'll be for more. We don't know, but it's going to be a part of the celebration. And poetry has been a big part of Dillon Fest, and it'll even play hopefully a larger role in 2017. We're getting our plans underway.
Great.
All right. Well, congratulations to Bob Dillon, and congratulations to you, John.
Saturday
for
at the
25
Rex
years.
is going to be the place to be, so I hope you two can come.
All right.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Good to see you.
It's time now for the business headlines from our friends at Business North. Esser Steel Minnesota's new CEO intends to conduct business in a new and improved manner at the firm's mine and partially built processing facility in Nashwauk. CEO Matthew Stock told Nashwauk City Councilors Monday he will reside locally and improve the lines of communication between the bankrupt company and area officials. He acknowledged that delayed contractor payments are a source of frustration, but said vendors are willing to continue to work with Esser under its new management and structure. Although Esser is still the project's owner, Stock said new ownership shares will likely be issued at some point in the future.
An aerospace company with Twin Ports ties hopes to make aircraft parts and assemblies in Grand Rapids. ACC Manufacturing on Monday will ask the IRRB for a $1.5 million loan to develop a new manufacturing facility. ACC is a division of One Aviation, a company formed last year as a combination of Superior-based Kestrel Aircraft and Eclipse Aerospace of New Mexico. The facilities will include an existing structure adjacent to the Grand Rapids Airport and a private hangar leased from the Grand Rapids Economic Development Authority. ACC expects to create 20 new jobs.
Northland College in Ashland has received a $1 million gift to establish a graduate degree program. The college is currently working with a consultant to identify the best structure and types of programs to launch in 2018. Northland College's president said the gift will allow Northland to fill growing demand for advanced study in fields like outdoor education, freshwater science, climate change, and others. For more regional economic news, visit businessnorth.com.
If you wish to comment on our show, pick up your telephone, dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And don't forget to visit the WDSE website for updates on your favorite shows, news about the station, events, and a listing of programs available on our 4 digital channels. Denny, do you have a favorite Bob Dylan song or story?
The times they are a-changing, and like a rolling stone.
Those are the
I'm a
easy
Dylan
ones.
fan.
You are?
I go back.
All right. Well, he's your homie. For Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.